Okay, so Spellmonger, Book 5, High Mage. Before I get into this, I want to talk about something in the series overall, and that is the book covers. I know, you're not supposed to judge a book by its cover, and I'm totally glad I didn't, because these covers are pretty terrible. They're mostly just pictures of castles and everything, and whereas, that does fit, I suppose. I think I've literally seen this castle on a different book cover for a different series entirely. And I know that the author very rarely has anything to do with the book covers. That's usually a publisher thing. So it's hard to really complain about this, but my god, these are not great covers. I mean, look at something like Oathbringer from Brendan Sanderson. That is a nice cover. It's got the very I think it's like Renaissance style art with one of the main characters sitting there in an imposing with a really nice pose, and it's like it really pops out. It really stands out amongst other books, whereas these are just sort of generic castles, like I already said. Again, don't judge a book by its cover, but, judging by the cover, it's kind of generic. Anyway, on to the actual book. This one kind of starts off in medias res, at the climax with a big battle between the humans and the Gavani, and they were setting up their entire defense around a bridge, and they basically just froze the river. This negates actually a lot of advantages that humans have, because amongst the species on the planet, humans are the only ones that really spent a specific amount of time on water. It's stated before this, so I don't feel bad saying this, but most of the species on the planet aren't native to the planet. The Alon races, so the Alka Alon, the Gavani, all those races evolved on a planet without much water on it. The largest body of water was maybe a stream. And isn't that a weird advantage to have amongst fantasy races? Humans, we can swim. In any case, from there it jumps back about a year, and this is about the same time that the previous book was taking place in. It was just, we were following Tyndall and Rondell, and this book we're following Min. It's very much in a similar vein as the previous series. It's about building things up, building up the world and the institutions of the kingdom's institutions. Well, also the book introduces a group of people they call the Kasari, which are basically your you see them in a lot of fantasy in a lot of fantasy series, your badass, ranger type people. Your irregulars, the people who are as a culture super badass, and that's their cultural touchstone, and yada yada yada. And I do have to say they're effective for what they end up being, and in a sense they're kind of a reminder of how humans were when they first came to Calador. They're virtually all literate, and they have a sophisticated understanding of things, and they have been said to be basically the same since humans first came to Calador. So they're kind of a remembrance of how humans were before Perwyn sank. And amongst these Kasari, there is a guy named Arborn, who ends up becoming Pentandra's main love interest. There's one particular line in which Pentandra is talking about this guy, and she, in attempt to being diplomatic, says, "Oh, except for Min," and Min's first response is just to go, "No, he is a way better man than me," and I just loved that line, and that whole interaction. Again, I really like that Pentandra and Min are just really good friends. They're best friends, and I love that the series is able to maintain that. Another thing that sort of stuck out to me is the character of Dunsalin, who you've heard a bit about. He was kind of important in book 2, and you've been following some of his exploits throughout the rest of the series. The guy is kind of an asshole, but he serves an important purpose, because there's this YouTuber who, I'm not going to name names, but let's just say their name rhymes with Silly Meat. And Silly Meat here is an incredible dick. They are just arrogant, vain, rude, and really rather stupid. They also happen to be part of a marginalized group, or a group that you would call marginalized, just like the mages in this series. And I don't hate silly meat. I mean, I do because they're a terrible person, but I don't hate them because of their marginalized status, and I like that they keep putting out content because it is a constant reminder that, wow, just because you're part of a marginalized group does not mean you're not a huge asshole. Dunsalin does the same job in this universe. He is an incredible dick, and it goes to show that no, not even the mages possess a special wisdom. They can be arrogant, greedy, vain, short-sighted, that kind of thing. I feel like that's an important thing to show us, that not everyone that's part of this class is necessarily a good person. Even though the main character we're following is part of this class and is fundamentally a good person. I think he did that. I think he's doing that rather well. Let's get into the one thing that this book introduced that I really, really love. The human gods. Basically, Brigga is a bitch and I love her. You see, in this, medieval-like society, they have various gods and various clergy surrounding the gods. And how the gods are explained in this universe as basically being human subconscious interacting with the magic of the world. And the way that humans have a, quote, collective subconscious kind of shapes the gods and gives them some sort of a form. This, condenses when there's actual, rule. The way we think of a god is what they're going to have the power over. So the goddess Brigga, like I already mentioned, she's a fire goddess. So anything that humans tend to associate with fire, like vengeance, craftsmanship, inspiration, childbirth for some reason. I don't really get that last one, but it's kind of thrown in the story as why is Green a god of childbirth? And the answer boils down to, I really don't know. Which I kind of like, because there are sometimes, in real life, there are things that gain certain associations, and you're like, where the hell did that come from? Anyway, this is a long-winded way of saying that the way that the gods come about in this world makes them, in a way... You know how there's a tendency in writing fantasy where they'll make gods that are so above all of humanity. You petty mortals don't know who you're messing with. These gods are kind of just superhuman. And I don't mean that an above human. I just mean really, really human. They have a frankness and honesty about them that is difficult to find outside of something like evolutionary psychology. They know where they came from, they know what their sphere is, and they know human nature even better than most people are willing to admit. The gods in this series are just straightforward and knowledgeable, basically. It's difficult to explain, but I hope I made my point. It's not that they're above humans, it's that they're just really, really human. And I do have to say, every time Brigga shows up, it is a delightful scene. She's a fire goddess, so of course she's described as being basically an attractive redhead. Because, they're a fire god. Would you imagine them any other way? Suffice it to say, again, recommended, but at this point you already knew that.
We're gonna get fired! Someone said fire!